Hey guys, welcome to another tutorial. We're going to have a look at text scrambling. So a week ago or so I was approached by a gentleman called Jerry van den Berg, and he asked me how to accomplish a certain effect. He had seen a few YouTube videos, and when I watched those it was apparent that it was a type of text scrambling he was after. So I started dabbling around with the built-in scrambler, but soon hit a few limitations. So I set upon basically recreating or creating a type of custom text scrambler, basically utilizing the Text Plus node and adding a bunch of expressions and fields and such to make our life easier. So the vast majority of the tutorial will be about that, and as always all the files are available on my website www.ablackbirdcoldsu.com. So head over there and download the stuff. One final note before we get into the actual tutorial. Most of what I will be showing will be from within Fusion. However, if you're a Davinci Resolve user, don't be discouraged, because everything you're seeing can be done in Davinci Resolve as well. At the end of the video, and you should see the time mark on the screen now, I'll show you some specifics for Resolve. So if you can't wait, skip ahead to that. However, do be aware that you would be missing out on the generic section where I will be explaining how the custom text scramble works. So my advice is to hang on, but if you can't wait, skip ahead. So let's first have a look at the built-in text scrambler. So to do that, let's have a look at the Text Plus node in a fresh new composition. All right, there we go. Let's move that into the viewport. Let's fit it in, and let's add some text. Text scrambling. There we go. Now what you would need to do here is basically go to Styled Text, right click, and then hit Text Scramble. Right, you see this is now being highlighted. Now at first you can't see anything at all. If we play this, nothing happens. But what happened in effect is that when you hit that when you add the text scramble there, it adds it as a modifier on the tab here on the right. So on the right here, if you go into the text scramble, you see a parameter called randomness. And lo and behold, when I move that to the right or to the right, you see that it starts scrambling the text. Now, so you can easily animate this, of course. So if you animate this now, randomness, and then go to say frame 60 or so, and then put the randomness to 0, then you get this effect, right? Very simple. Now, the first thing you will notice is that the text doesn't stay in one sort of single place. It sort of moves left and right, or at least seemingly. The reason there is that the font that is being utilized is sort of a proportional font, as in each character can occupy a different horizontal space. What we typically want to do, however, with text scrambling is to use a so-called mono-spaced font, so that each individual character occupies the same horizontal space. So if we go back to Tools and go to the font, and for instance choose Courier New, and if we play it now, you can see this looks a lot better. So a built-in Windows font like Courier New, or I think there's Consoles as well. And in some of the other examples, I utilized a font I downloaded, which is free for commercial use. That's LCD 14, and I'll have a link below my video for that. So when you download my project files, bear in mind that if you haven't got that font installed, it will throw up an error. So just, again, bear that in mind. So that's the first thing. So this all looks good. So you would think, why would you need to have a custom text scrambler? Well, I'll tell you why. There is, at least seemingly, no way to control this very much in terms of, for instance, the direction. I played around with trying to make this move from left to right as it descrambles, as you saw in my sort of introduction, but I couldn't make it work, even if you add another modifier to this modifier, namely a follower. And if we were to do that and basically say, okay, in the follower I want to specify a different timing and such, or the other way around, first add a follower and then later on a text scramble, it never seems to work. Right? It never really does anything, even though it's set to left to right. So that is the first shortcoming. Again, please leave me a comment if you have found a way around this. Now, secondly, you have to substitute characters, which is great, right? If you just want to have the characters substituted, difficult word, by zeros and ones, you just change it. Let's undo that. And you've got a few other parameters, but as said, left to right is not an option. Also, if I want to exclude certain characters from being scrambled, I can't do that, right? And in certain cases, I want to do that. And thirdly, there's also no way to give a certain different order. Like if I wanted to descramble according to an alphabetic order or any other order, I can't do this. Right, so you saw that in the third example, I think, in the introduction, where you saw a text being descrambled and it started with the A, ended with the Z. Right? There's no direct way of doing this with the text scramble follower. Okay, so let's get rid of that. Moving on. What I did in my Fusion installation is I added it as a macro. It is basically a settings file, so I saved my node, my custom node, as a settings file, and I then saved it into the macro folder. So the advantage here is that I can just do Ctrl spacebar, and if I type in Scramble, you see my custom text scramble. Easy as that. I throw it in here. Move this, let's go to a different layout here. So it's just a text plus node with a bunch of additional options. So there's some additional text boxes, parameters, etc., etc. So the whole thing is driven by one fairly massive expression in the styled text field. So styled text here, we don't actually touch this. As an end user, you're not touching this. However, the main one here is the text input box. So it says here text scramble. So if we play it here, you can see the original text appears. Right. So let's go through the details here. There is a delay setting. The delay setting basically is there to basically indicate how many frames does it take between characters to be descrambled. So from the T to the E will take 3 frames, and then to the X another 3 frames, etc. Time offset is, as it indicates, it's just an offset. So here it doesn't start descrambling until frame 30. If I would make the delay longer, like say 8 frames, you can see as we play through that, it takes each time 8 frames to go to the next character. So that's all very simple. Now the exclude one is interesting, because right now it looks empty. But as a matter of fact, the box is not empty. I added a line feed and a space. So if I delete everything and then go back to the start, you can see here that even the space between text and scramble got replaced. Now in a lot of cases, oops, sorry, I added a space in accidentally again. So if I play this here, it plays like that. Now, that from a visual perspective, that's not always great. So add a space and it will get ignored. But what if I have 2 separate lines? Text scramble example. Let's make the text a bit smaller. Right. Here you don't see actually 2 separate lines, even though in the input box you've got 2. So all you need to do here is, after the space you just entered, hit an enter, and now it will ignore the line feed character. I think that's ASCII character 10 or something like that. That will get ignored. Also, for instance, you could do it with anything. Say, for whatever aesthetic reason, you don't want the X to be scrambled. Add an X, and as you can see here, it's not being scrambled at all. So it's descrambled right from the start. Okay, so that can be very powerful. Next one up, as with the original text scramble, we've got the replacement characters. So if we want to just focus, say, on capital characters or letters, then it will just replace it with capital ones, or whatever you fancy. Now, next one is an interesting one, of course. You saw it being descrambled from left to right. That's because this tick box is here. So if we untick this, and if we then play it, as you can see here, well, it may not be that noticeable, but what it is doing it in alphabetic order. The reason is, if you de-tick this, or untick this rather, then it will look at the appearance order. So these characters will be descrambled in this order, A first, then B, so alphabetic order. But of course you can do it the other way around. Right? So, or you can do it in a complete random fashion or whatever you want. So it's extremely, well, powerful, I would say. And that's really the last one you need to be aware of. And then the box underneath here, effective appearance, is just for internal use. Right? It basically says, okay, effective appearance at frame 0, right? Nothing is being descrambled yet. If you then continue on, as of frame 30, it will start descrambling in that order. So you know here, when it's at K, everything up until and including K has been descrambled. Right? But other than it being used internally, don't touch this basically. Okay? So that is really all there is to all the settings. Now the interesting thing here is, of course, that you can use this in conjunction with the already built-in animation parameters. So as you saw in an example, you saw the text being built up as it is being descrambled. Right? So let's try to recreate that. So we do the left to right again, and we've got time offset. It will start as of 30 to descramble. Let's keep that, but let's then animate start and end right on, or rather just the end in our case. So if we do at the end or at the start of the composition, so at frame 0, let's animate this, and then let's make this animation, say, 40 or so long, and then it's being written on. Right? And if you then play it, right, as it is written, it's getting descrambled. Having said all of that, let's then have a look, and this is really the vast majority of this tutorial, how this works. As said, at the end, I will tell you a bit about how this gets installed, how you install this. So well, actually for Fusion itself, I think most people are used to it. You just take the composition and you can open it up, right? But what you can then do is go to Settings, Save As, and you can then save it as a setting, but rather than going to the Settings folder, go to the Macros folder and save it there. That ensures then that when you do the Ctrl B, it will show up, the Ctrl spacebar, it will show up in this selected toolbar. I find it really handy if you use a node a lot. So let's have a look at the other examples. So you saw this at the start of the video. I think it was the second introduction. So really, this is just what I just explained. The only difference here is, of course, you've got text, 2 different pieces of text. So what I did here was basically, okay, you've got the style, not the style text, the input text box, that is being animated as well. If you go to the start of the timeline, you see great flexibility. You go 1 ahead to 99, still says great flexibility, but then it switches to easy to use, the next text. And if you look underneath, the time offset is following the same thing. Really, the time offset was 30 until you change it to the new text, then it becomes 125. So it's basically saying, okay, I want to use this whole text scrambling effect twice. First for the first piece of text, and there the time offset is 30. But when I switch over to the second sentence, right, then also move along the time offset, because otherwise that time offset is still in the past. Right. So that's basically how this one worked. The alphabetic order one, very, very simple. Right, it's just this text here. I added the exclude ones for the line feed and the space, replacement, and left to right unticked. And that's basically it. So it's extremely simple. I've got one final one. There we go. So this is the old monitor, the sort of 80s style animation. So let's pull that in here. Right. So from an animation perspective, it's all the same as you've seen before. I added another text plus node just for the first sentence that's not subject to scrambling or descrambling. What I did here though, to give you that sort of old computery type look with that monochrome type screen, or the green on black, is basically have the text node, the image fairly small, width and height, 500, and then later on I resize it so you get that sort of somewhat that pixelation. Right, so that is number one. There are multiple ways of doing this, but this is a fairly straightforward way of doing it. And then I add basically a TV effect where I add a bunch of scan lines, and I basically ensure that the noise is set to 0. There's no roll bar or anything, or the strength is 0. Right, so that looks pretty good. But then I needed to have another one, basically because this gives the lines, but I wanted to have sort of pixels. So I added a second instance of the TV one and make that act upon a transform from text, where it's basically rotated over and then apply it and then rotate it back. Whoopsie, rotate it back and then combine the two. And then you have a sort of a pixelation. Again, there are different ways of doing this. I thought this gave a good look, but of course your opinion may differ. Then I add a bit of a soft glow, transform it to set it in the right position, add a background node, so that's just a standard node with a gradient. There's some TV node applied to it as well, where it's hard to see, but there are scan lines. Right, you merge that together, you essentially get this, and then finally, or almost finally, add another TV effect to it to add the roll bar, and then ultimately a lens distort to give that sort of monitor or CRT monitor look. And that was basically all there was to it. Okay, so I hope you guys enjoyed that. So as a final part, I'll show you guys on how to install things in and how to deal with things in Davinci Resolve. Right, we're now in Davinci Resolve. So let's try this technique and everything in Davinci Resolve. So as you probably know, in Davinci Resolve you can't really work with the Fusion tab in a true standalone type way. You always need to have media in the Edit tab on the timeline. So if you really want to make it sort of autonomous, you would need to create sort of a fake clip, if you will, or sort of a placeholder clip. In this particular case, we're going to just use a little video. Right, so we're adding that to our media pool. Go to the Edit tab and go to our media pool and drag it in. So it's it's actually a little experiment I did. I was, I think, inspired by Stranger Things and making a sort of a tunnel. It doesn't look very cool, but in any case, it's just an example. So what we'll do here is we'll make this text appear on top here, that is descrambling. So let's go to the Fusion tab. Right. And with the media in one selected, Control Spacebar, and we add the custom text Scramble. Now, you see it appearing straight away. In a moment, I'll show you guys on how to get this added to your toolbar or to your toolbox. It's very similar to the way you would do it in Fusion. But for now, let's keep this very brief. We will just go to Text Scrambler and make it the text a bit smaller. Right, and let's choose that LED type font I had in the other example. Oh, sorry, LCD font. So LCD 14, and we call this the tunnel. Right, and if we then play it, we see it slowly appearing. So that's all there is to it, and then you can build your composition as it is. And if you go back to the Edit tab, you can see here it plays nicely. Right, so that's the way you would use it in Resolve. Now, if you haven't got it yet on installed as a setting, as a macro, if you will, what you need to do, basically, let's just delete this for now. Right, and what you would need to do is basically go to File, Import Fusion Composition, and go to the Base Text Scramble Base. That is the very much simplified single note composition. With this selected, right click, Settings, Save As, and do as you did in Fusion, but then it's in the Davinci Resolve Fusion folder, and rather than the Settings subfolder, go to the Macros one and save it there. Right, I've already got it there, so I don't need to do it. And then the next time you start Davinci Resolve, it's there for you to use forever. Right? And that is really all there is to it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. If you've got any questions, do let me know. If you've got comments, of course, let me know. And if you like my stuff, please consider subscribing to my channel. I get very much motivated by that. And, you know, any type of interaction, you know, it's very much appreciated. And especially if you end up making, you know, using this in your work, and if you can share it, if you've got a YouTube channel somewhere or a Vimeo channel, whatever, let me know. And, you know, comment on my video and, you know, link to your work. That would be absolutely fantastic. Hey guys, have a great day. See you guys later. Cheers. Bye.